Hi everyone, welcome back to the 86 F's to Give podcast. I'm your host Al, and I am so grateful that you are here with me today. I know I start every episode with this, but I just want to express my gratitude and happiness and overall joy that this podcast has been bringing me, and for all of you that are here listening, it is truly just the highlight of every single week. So thank you for being here. Also wanted to give a couple disclaimers. It's Wednesday and I have to record now because I'm working tonight, and they're doing work on the roof like literally right next to mine. So I apologize if you hear their flamethrower that they're using to like burn something over there. Also, Puda is here with me again, so you might hear him tip-tapping around. And also just wanted to give a reminder that we are on YouTube, we are on podcast platforms such as Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So please leave a review, leave a comment. It like brings me so much joy to hear everyone's thoughts and opinions on these episodes. So please do not be afraid to leave a comment. Check us out on YouTube. You know the things. All the necessary links will be in the description. So yeah, now that we've gotten all of our housekeeping things out of the way, I am so excited to talk about today's topic. So as you can tell by the title, the thing that we're 86ing today is the phrase, if not, no worries, or no worries, it's all good. Really the no worries phrase, we're just gonna try to cut that right out of our lives today. And like I say every episode, this is the starting point to being able to do that. We're not going to wake up tomorrow and not say these words anymore, but we're going to start the conversation of why I think it's so important to not give people outs when you ask things of them, or to not feel guilty for asking people things. And to also, on the flip side, which we're going to get into a little bit, is to not feel guilty saying no when people ask you things. So yeah, we're going to get into all of it. I'm really excited. I did a little research like normal, and it really got me fired up because sometimes I come up with a topic and I'm like, am I the only one that's like struggling with these things, or that thinks this is an issue that I have, or not an issue, but just something I need to work on? And it's so cool to Google it and start doing research and seeing articles and articles about how to be better with this area of your life, like other people's experiences and stories. And it's just like not cool that we all struggle with this, but just it makes me feel a little less crazy. And so if you're somebody that says, if not, no worries, like 80 times a day, like I do, this episode is for you. And also, if you're not one of those people, it's still for you because you probably know somebody that says it all the time, maybe to you when they ask you things. And it's going to be helpful in their journey to stop doing that. If you kind of call them out and say, you don't have to give me that out. Like I will say yes or no. If I can, I would happily do it. If I can't, yada, yada, yada. So let's get kind of into why I'm so passionate about this. And like I mentioned, it's literally something I say probably at least once a day, but definitely multiple times a week. And it's like, it just comes out of me whether I'm texting, whether I'm speaking in person with somebody, it just flows right out of my mouth as if it's like the ending to a sentence every time I ask somebody to do something for me or for a favor, or if they want to hang out, literally anything. And I think it's rooted in like constantly feeling like you're asking too much of somebody, or I'm bothering somebody, or I'm burdening somebody, to the point where I feel like I need to give them an out before they even get a chance to answer my question, or see if they're able to do it, or, you know, answer honestly that they aren't. And I think I do this as well because I know how I feel when somebody asks something of me that I like can't physically do, or that I'm really not up for doing, and like how guilty I feel for saying no. So I think on the flip side, when then I'm asking somebody something, I'm like giving them an out to almost like eliminate them feeling guilty, because I don't want to be the reason that somebody feels guilty for saying no. So it's like this whole backwards thing where we're all kind of just not being like completely honest when we ask things of people, or when people ask things of us. And I want to be better on both sides of that spectrum. So first, I'm going to talk about 86ing the feeling like we have to give people the out, right? By saying, it's all good, no worries, or if not, no worries, you know, phrases like that. And then at the end, we're going to talk a little bit about 86ing the feeling of guilt for not being able to do something when somebody asks a favor of me. So we're going to start, like I said, with the out giving. You know, I want to 86 giving people outs. Examples of this, like I said before, like if you were to ask somebody for a ride to the airport and you your text looks a little like this. Hi, any chance you can take me to the airport? If not, no worries whatsoever. A bunch of exclamation points. Tell me you haven't sent that exact text, okay? And it's literally something that just comes out. Like I said, like it just like, I can't even fathom sending the text without that at the end, because I'm like, well, I don't want them to feel bad for not being able to take me, but like I really need a ride. And it's like, it's actually not no worries, right? Like I do need this favor. I do need somebody to take me or pick me up from the airport, or, you know, I could Uber or whatever. But it's like, when you're asking a favor, like you obviously need something. So like you're not lying when you say, if not, no worries, but like, we all need to be worrying a little bit, you know, like somebody help me out. So it's kind of untruthful to say, no worries if not. Like sometimes there's little favors that people are asking that you really don't need somebody for, or it's totally fine if they don't. But if it's something important to you, don't smack on the no worries if not, because it is worries, okay? There are worries. But this phrase has kind of turned into a meme on Twitter or X and just like social media recently. And I actually, in my research, found a really funny like comic from The New Yorker that has like the most extreme examples, and then it just throws on, if not, no worries at the end. And it's like, I'm just gonna read a few because they're so funny, but it really puts into perspective how like silly the phrase if not, no worries is. So this first one is like a picture of a woman hanging on like outside of a window, and it says, "Hiya, I'm currently holding on for dear life and surely moments away from a gruesome death, so I will need confirmation on this ASAP as my demise is imminent. No worries if not though." "Hey guys, I appear to be under attack by a megalodon, so I appreciate some help if anyone has a spare minute. No worries if not." Like they're just so silly, and it's like literally a picture of somebody about to get eaten by a shark. Oh, this one killed me. "Hi, Kate. Just to let you know, I am currently on fire, so it would be great if I could have this afternoon off to deal with it. I know we've been busy, though, so no worries if not." Like, it's so funny. I'll try to put some of these pictures on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, but, like, it's so funny to think about literally being in, like, the most extreme scenario and actually genuinely needing help, and then just smacking on the, if not, no worries, like, I'll figure it out. Like, no, everybody worry. I need help. I bring that up because it's actually something that's, like, so common and that we all are going through. The fact that it turned into a meme proves that, right? Like, things, you know, memes are relatable, and things that go viral online, it's because they're relatable. So the fact that we all think this is funny means we all do this, right? And I'm not like 100% sure where it stems from, but I think it also kind of falls under the people-pleasing umbrella and not wanting to like inconvenience anyone. And when I did my research, I was kind of proven right with this, that it's also kind of from a deep-rooted feeling that expressing our needs, or especially an emotional need, is burdening people, right? Like we don't want to feel like we're inconveniencing or burdening, or that we're too much or whatever, you know? I read an article from the Huffington Post that I thought was really interesting, and I'll link in the description, but it pretty early on in the article mentions how this is like not exclusively, but pretty high percentages of women use this phrase over men. And come on, that is not shocking whatsoever. But I thought it was interesting that it brought it up because duh, of course, like society makes women feel like any little inconvenience or anytime we need help or we ask for help, or women in power, like in managerial or director or boss positions, like them, you know, asking their team to do something, like it can come across as bossy, or it can come across as, you know, needing too much assistance or whatever. Like we always, as women, have this perception that we're trying to play defense on by other people in society, but especially men, right? You know, like I just mentioned, like especially in the workplace, it can also be kind of this internalized misogyny, which the article talks about, because we don't want to be looked at as too bossy or impolite or the B word. And it's hilarious because when a man boss or manager asks another man to do something, yes, boss, yes, sir, off on my way, they're never like, oh man, my boss is really bossy. That man is really bossy. Like, no, it's expected because that's the societal norm, and that's what we've been taught or trained to think, that when a man asks something of us, like, okay, we just do it. But if a woman's asking, woo, that girl is bossy. Like, a little bit of a double standard here. And obviously this has gotten much, much better in recent years, and like we're not in the 1900s when like women couldn't, whatever, you know the drill. But like it's still very much present, and there's still industries that are very much dominated by men, specifically white men, and this is something that women struggle with. And that's where this phrase comes up, especially in the workplace, when we ask something of somebody that we actually genuinely need help with, or we know I have too much on my plate, so I'm going to delegate this task as a boss, as bosses do, right? We feel worried or concerned of how that's going to be perceived. So we smack on the phrase, if not, no worries, or it's all good if you can't get to it. Like, I'll figure it out. Like, no, it's not no worries. I need this done today. So ask with confidence and let's get it done, right? Another thing that this article brought up that I thought was super, super interesting was that women in their like 20s and 30s are kind of like currently 20, 30-year-old women are kind of sandwiched in between these two generations of like our parents and our grandparents being taught that like women don't have, not taught, but just that's how it was when they were growing up, is that like women don't have all this power. They kind of stay home and they stay in these like roles that are less powerful and don't give them so much say and things like that. And then we're also seeing like kids these days that are being taught the complete opposite, and we're seeing, people like female athletes and Kamala Harris and all these like incredible women doing amazing things. And like these young girls are being like, why the heck can't I be a boss or a president or all these things? Whereas like our parents might not think that those roles, or probably even like our grandparents more so, right? Like don't even think that those roles are capable for women, or they just hadn't been around to see that as often as people younger than us are. So us as 20-year-olds in our 20s and 30s are kind of feeling this like pressure and confusion because we don't kind of know which way to go, because we don't want to like disappoint our parents, but we also want to be good role models for the young children in our lives and our kids one day. So I thought that was really interesting that the article brought that up, because it kind of gives you like an identity crisis, because you're just not sure like which way you're supposed to go with this and present yourself. So yeah, I definitely wanted to bring that up. And if you guys have any thoughts about that, like feel free to comment and continue that part of the conversation in the comments, because that was really interesting to me. But what this article kind of said about how to stop using the phrase, if not, no worries, was first the recognition, right? To recognize that our asks and our requests and our needs are legitimate and they're valid and worthy of being asked of people, and that we are worthy of being helped. And it also gave some affirmations to use, which I love an affirmation, so I will always share those when I have ones that are relevant to what we're talking about. The first one is, I matter and am deserving of help from others. Second one, I am not a burden. The third one, you kind of fill in the blank with like whatever. This was more for the workplace, but I am in a blank role in the workplace, and it is my job to delegate tasks and instruct my team. Like reminding yourself that it is your job to ask things of people and to delegate and request tasks be done by other people. That is what you're getting paid to do, and you're not too bossy. You are not being strict. You're not being impolite. That's literally your job. Also, to kind of combat the feeling of being too bossy, remind yourself that it's comforting to most people to be leaned on and to be asked, to do something or to be asked to help. Like, how you feel, especially as like a kid, or, when you're in like middle school, when your teacher asks you to bring something to another teacher in another classroom, like you felt so empowered to do that because people were trusting you and they were leaning on you. So just remember, like, that is human nature, to be wanted, to feel like somebody needs you. So when you're asking something, especially in your personal life, maybe not so much in the workplace, but like if you're asking for a favor or you're asking for somebody to help you, like people that genuinely care about you and are good people in your life are going to want to help you because they enjoy the feeling of being needed and wanted and, supplying that help for you. Just like you would when somebody asks you to help. Like you feel good about being able to help them when you are able. I wanted to talk a little bit on why this is so important to me specifically. Is obviously I've mentioned this a little bit before on this podcast, but I work in college athletics, and athletics in general and it's gotten so much better, but it's still a pretty male-dominated industry. I want to be a good example for the female student athletes at the school that I work at, or other young females that might be looking up to me from wherever. Like, I just want to be a good example as a female and not only a female, but a like biracial female in the sports industry. Like there's so many ways that so many different groups that I'm representing that I just want to be a good example for. So that's one, why this is so important to me. Like I don't want to be the person that a little girl hears say, if not, no worries, a million times, and then that becomes their out that they start giving to people, you know, or whatever it may be. I also think that it's just a bad habit of mine, and I'm all for the self-awareness and, you know, calling myself out and kind of putting myself in check, and it's time to call myself out. I've been doing this for probably the past like 20 years. Well, not since I was 5, probably like, I don't know, 15, 14, 12 years since I've been like able and old enough to ask people for favors. Like, I feel like I've just been throwing this phrase at the end of it. And, you know, it probably got worse in like high school and college and post-college for sure. I've been doing it for as long as I can remember. And like I said, I just do it all the time. And to the point where it's like second nature to just throw that phrase at the end of a text. And I want to stop doing that, because like I mentioned in the first point, like I'm gonna have kids one day, and I don't want my kids to be hearing me say that every time I ask, you know, somebody to do something or for a favor, and, you know, be the reason that they then feel less confident when they ask somebody for something. And lastly, I believe that it's kind of bleeding into other areas of my life as well. You know, like my self-confidence, how I present myself in public settings, especially when I have to speak in public. I want to be the best version of myself in all of the areas of my life. So if I can kind of fix and work on this issue that is kind of bleeding into all these different areas, I feel like it will help me, you know, with my self-confidence, with my public speaking, with my delegating and things like that. And it'll help me in my, not only my professional career, but my just like being a good human and, you know, existing out in the world as somebody that is confident and able to express her needs. And that's something I've always struggled with, and I want to be better at. And I feel like this phrase kind of trains my brain that it's okay to give people an out, and it's not. Like, if you need something, it is okay to ask for it. I just feel really passionate about that. And, you know, as somebody that has really, really, really awesome people in my life that have trained me to be able to rely on them, and I've been able to trust them, and they've built that trust over years and years and years of friendship, or my parents or my sibling. You know, I have awesome family members and people in my life that I am able to lean on. So it's like, I don't even really know where it comes from that I'm like scared to ask people for help or making them feel guilty, because like I really have never had many experiences of people being like, no, you're asking too much of me, I will not be doing that. Like, I've never had really a bad reaction to asking a small favor of someone. So again, I feel like this is more of a societal thing, and that's why I'm so passionate about talking it on here, because whoever's listening to this, like, I'm sure you can relate, and or you know somebody that can relate, and that's why this is so important to be talking about, because we don't all need to be going around saying, if not, no worries, after every time we ask a question, because it is worries. Okay, there are worries, and I need everybody to stop just giving people outs, because they are grown people and they can say no if that's what they want to say when you ask something of them. And so that kind of leads me into the other side of, you know, the feeling guilty when somebody asks something of us that we can't physically do, like we're too busy, or we already have plans, or we're unable to physically make it to somewhere to help someone, or you're just not up for doing that in that moment. And that's okay too. I want to talk about this side of things as well, because I think that's part of the reason that we use the phrase, if not, no worries, or it's all good, no worries, because again, we understand what it feels like to be on the other side when people ask us and we feel bad. So we use that phrase. But I think if we can kind of reframe our thoughts around the guilt feeling, then I'll feel less compelled to use that phrase, because I won't think I'm making people feel guilty, because I've worked on, you know, I've done the work to reframe my thoughts around it. So some examples of responses that I want to start to use, you know, when somebody asks me to do something and I'm unable to do it, I'm, you know, saying no is okay, you know, telling myself that I'm allowed to say no, saying, you know, not right now is a really good option. Like, I am so slammed right now, I have so much on my plate, but I would love to help you tomorrow or this weekend or next week or whatever it may be. Like, just being honest in where you're at, I think, is a really good way to go about kind of avoiding that guilt. Is like, I laid it out on the table, I told them what I'm able to do. If that's still not enough for them, like, I'm so sorry. Like, you know, if it's a more timely thing, like, you are allowed to feel bad that you're not able to help, but it's the guilt that I want to kind of avoid. Even just saying no is valid because you don't want to, or if you're not up for it, or if you had a bad day and somebody asked you to, you know, help them move. Like, I'm sorry, maybe I'm not physically up for it right now in my mental health, and my body is just not up for that. And it's okay to be honest about that and say no, and kind of remove the guilt from not being able to fulfill someone else's need in that moment. And obviously there's exceptions to this. Like, there's timely things that come up at work where you're not able to say no, or you have to prioritize certain tasks over others. And that's okay. Like, that's going to happen. But the thing that I want to remind people of is when there are less timely things, like, you're allowed to, especially in the workplace, say, hey, I already have this, and this on my plate. What would you, my boss, like me to prioritize, since now you're throwing another thing onto my plate? Do you want me to drop those 3 that I've just listed and do this one that you're asking me now? Or do you want me to stick with the order of tasks that I prioritized already, and kind of throwing it back on them and realizing that it's not up to you to feel guilty that you're not able to do something. It's on them not to feel guilty, but to feel the pressure of maybe asking too much of you at this time. That's another thing that women specifically, but I mean, maybe even men, because they don't want to feel like they're not capable or that they're not up for the job or whatever when people ask them things. But it's okay to say, hey, I have this, and this on my plate, and I want to do all of these tasks to their fullest. So can one of these tasks get pushed to tomorrow, or whatever it may be. Like, being upfront and honest with your boss is really, really important, because hopefully they will value you being honest and asking which tasks they would prefer you prioritize, rather than you trying to do all 4 or however many it may be, and then they're all kind of subpar because you had to kind of half-ass each of them to be able to do them all in today's time, So hopefully they would, prefer the first one where you ask and you're honest and say, like, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to reach all of these tasks today. What would you like me to do? And I think going into the situation with being prepared with what you're going to say when this happens, like, that helps me so much. My mom really kind of is the one that trained me to prepare for all scenarios, especially ones that I know I'm going to be anxious in. And obviously you're not going to be prepared if it's a situation that's never happened before, but once it does happen and it's maybe something that you think will happen again, like, go home, reevaluate the situation, and come up with a few things that you are just your go-to phrases for when things that make you feel anxious or feel like you're not being a good enough employee or whatever it may be. Like, have those phrases to immediately lean on when your boss asks you to do the 16th thing for the day and it's a Friday and you're stressed out of your mind. Having that, hey, you asked me to do 15 other things today. Which one would, like, what can you put them in order of what ones you would like to be done first? Because now I'm feeling a little stressed. Having that phrase in the bank ready to be used when you're in that moment will help you so much with the guilt aspect, because you won't feel guilty and maybe you will, but it'll hopefully help train you to not feel guilty over time and as you practice this, because you're being honest and explaining where you're at, right? So I love having pre-made phrases in the bank, in my brain, ready to use for any situation. I feel like this is a really good example of that. And kind of some affirmations for this side of things is to remind yourself, like, I'm allowed to set boundaries and I'm allowed to stick to those boundaries, right? And another affirmation could be, I'm honoring what feels right for me in this moment, or right for my body. And my friends will understand if I'm unable to help at this time, because, I'm so helpful usually, but they will understand if this one time I'm not able to. Those are things that you need to remind yourself of when people are asking things of you, because there's no guilt that needs to be felt when you're just being human, right? And so some of my final thoughts are that it is really interesting to me that this is kind of a generation-wide feeling that we have and do. And, because I genuinely don't think, like I mentioned before, I have like really awesome people in my life. And I don't think I've ever even heard my parents or my mom specifically say, no worries if not, to literally anyone. Like, she's big on not giving people outs. Like, I don't think I've ever heard my mom or dad say something like that. So I do think it really is a generational thing, because my parents, and I've talked about this before, like, they have instilled so much confidence in me that it's like mind-blowing that I still have anxieties and different areas where I'm not super confident in, especially my mom, since she's a therapist. But both of my parents have really been so crucial in my confidence journey, because my mom would sit us down and give us not lectures, but kind of lectures, and she knows what I'm talking about. But looking back, I use so many of the phrases and the tools that she would teach my brother and I in those lectures still to this day. And it's like, you would think I would have all the tools, right? But obviously nobody has all the tools. So it's fun to reflect on kind of where things stem from, because not everything comes from your parents. Not everything comes from society. And for me, it's really helpful to kind of pinpoint where something that I do or something that I feel kind of comes from, because then it helps me break it down and realize how to debunk it or, kind of 86 it out of my life. So yeah, I think it's really interesting that this is kind of a generational society thing that we, especially women, but all kind of are feeling in today's era, and feeling that I'm not a burden and that we're not burdens as humans. And that's something I'm really passionate about, because like I just said, if somebody like me that was never told that as a kid, or never, which I'm so eternally grateful for, because I know there are kids that were told they're a burden or they're annoying or they're too much or they're asking too much or whatever as children. And I was not ever told that. And I still feel like this sometimes. So it's again, imagining what somebody that was told that as a kid, how they're feeling and how they probably navigate asking for help or asking a favor of somebody. They probably have 10 times worse thoughts in their brain. And that's why I'm so passionate about talking about things like this. So yeah, again, hopefully starting this conversation will get us going in the right direction, because it's definitely a habit that I want to break and want to help people break, because it's just comical that we all, especially us 20, 30-year-old women, are doing this. But yeah, that's kind of all I have for today's episode. I'm so grateful that you have tuned into another episode of 86 F's to Give. This is episode 7, and I'm just itching to get to episode 10, because that just kind of feels like a huge milestone, because that'll be past 2 months. 10 is double digits, and I'm just really excited to get to that number. So maybe I will try to have a guest on for that one. But yeah, thank you all for being here. This is, again, some of the best parts of my week is planning out these episodes, filming them, editing them, posting them, and hearing people's thoughts and opinions. So yeah, I'm just so grateful you're here, truly. One more reminder to follow us at 86 F's to Give on Instagram, and at 86 F's to Give pod on TikTok, and 86 F's to Give podcast on YouTube. So yeah, and if no one has told you recently, I love you, I'm proud of you, and remember to 86 the phrase, if not, no worries, because we are worthy of being helped and asking help from others. So yeah, bye.